Whether you love it or hate it, a trip to the supermarket is pretty much inevitable, whether you shop once a week, once a month, or unless you live on takeaways, which we hope you don't. Although all supermarkets and grocery stores don't necessarily have the same layout, most of them will stick with a general layout, with fresh produce located on the outside of the store and all the processed canned, jars, packets of consumables located in the middle aisles. So with this in mind, most of the healthy, nutritious foods that we should be consuming can be found on the outside of the store. This is obviously all your fruits, your vegetables, your fish, eggs and dairy. Now obviously there are a few times when we need to go to the middle aisles to make up the stuff that isn't on the outside. This will be things like the oils, the nuts, the seeds, maybe some rice, herbs and spices. But the main bulk of the trolley, keep this in mind, should be sourced from the outside of the supermarket. So we mentioned that in the middle of the supermarket, this is where all your packaged goods are. Now, even though the packaged goods will contain sometimes healthy products, it's still really important to look at the labels, because when you read the labels, you might find that something that seemed healthy has lots of salts, sugars added, and maybe some preservatives, E-numbers, etc. So this leads us on to our next section, label reading.
Reading nutrition labels can be confusing and time-consuming if you're not sure exactly what you're looking for. But it is a great tool to have, as it can help you determine which foods are okay to purchase and which foods we should stay away from. Many a time we have been surprised and saved from making a poor food choice by quickly checking the label before putting it in our shopping cart. When we pick up an item to check the nutrition, the majority will look something like the label you'll see here, and it will detail the main nutritional information such as total calories per container, jar or packet, etc. The serving size, total calories per serving, percentage of the recommended daily allowance, usually based on a 2,000 calorie intake, so this might need to be adjusted if yours is slightly different. The next one will be the total weight of the product, macronutrient information, your protein, your carbohydrates and your fats, the sugar content, the sodium content, so the salt, the fibre content, and lastly vitamins and minerals. As you can see, there is a lot of information that can get a bit confusing, but if you know your estimated calories for your goal and roughly your macronutrient split, then it will become a little bit clearer. So according to the nutrition label, we can now know the following information. The calories per serving is 250. The serving size is 1 cup, and this will be half the packet as there are 2 servings per container. With regards to the macronutrients, protein is 5 grams, which is quite low for this. Carbohydrates are 31, and if you have a goal of about 100 to 150 grams, this takes up a considerable amount of your carbohydrates for the day. Sugars are at 5 grams, and as a guide, 25 grams is usually the added sugar guide per day. As we can see, the fat is 12 grams, so this is quite high for the serving amount. Supermarkets are designed to fool us and make us buy things that we don't really need. We have a couple of tricks that we find helpful, some of which you may have heard before and some may be new tips. So, tip number 1 is don't go to the supermarket hungry. If you go food shopping when you're hungry, then you're setting yourself up for temptation disaster. When we're hungry, our brain basically looks for the quick and easy food to eat at the earliest possible opportunity. And this type of food is usually in the form of processed rubbish. Packets of crisps, chocolate bars, etc. If we go after recently eating, we won't feel the urge to look for fast food, but instead we should be able to make healthy, more informed decisions when shopping. In other words, we want to be shopping with our head, not our stomach. Tip number 2, make a list and stick to it. If there's a time to get your laser focus on, it's now. Making a list helps you pick out the food items you made a conscious effort to write down when you're at home with no temptations in front of you. So now all you need to do is stick to the list and don't let your eyes wander down the treat aisles. Stay focused on what's written down and move from one item to the next. Tip number 3 is think about your goals. If, inevitably, when you're faced with a temptation, just stop for a second and ask yourself, is this really a healthy option? Is it full of processed ingredients that are going to cause more harm than good? Is it goal specific or not? Is the few minutes of the taste worth the sacrifice for your goal? And what other healthier options do you have to satisfy your craving? Take a minute to ask yourself these questions, and this will help you think about what's important to you and may stop you from buying impulsively. Hopefully these couple of tips will help you to avoid the temptations at the supermarket and instead make better, healthier choices that will keep you healthy and moving forward towards your goals.
When it comes down to it, food companies and supermarkets are not only there to provide you with the food and household items you need to live on a daily basis, but they're there primarily to make money. At the end of the day, the food industry is a massive business, and there are lots of little tricks that they use to entice us into buying more. Here are a few food industry and supermarket secrets that we can all benefit from knowing, and they might influence the food choices you make on your next visit. Golden zones, impulse areas, or grab zones as they're sometimes known as, are areas in the supermarket that are positioned at the checkout tills and walk-through queues. These areas are usually filled with treats and quick snacks, and they're there to make money from you just as you're feeling a little bit peckish after your big shop. They're the last stop before you pay, so supermarkets like to offer you a last temptation to spend just a little bit more money. The shop in shop. A section of the supermarket with a different vibe can lure you in and give you feelings as though you're in a different kind of environment and it's not a boring old supermarket. This is especially aimed at the beauty section, the clothing area, or maybe the wine section of the supermarket. But they put a little bit of wooden flooring down and fancy lighting, and they make you feel as if you should treat yourself, so watch out for this little trick. Food brands often pay supermarkets a listing or placement fee. This means that the product gets a prime location, so when you walk down the aisle, it's usually at eye level. Most of these brands will have be more well-known expensive brands, and for most people, the easiest to pick off the shelf. You'll also notice that the kids' cereals will be displayed at eye level, and with all those fancy colours and pictures, it's easy for kids to be lured in and say, right, I want those sugar-laden cereals immediately. In the world we live in today, food labels are becoming increasingly more colourful and pleasing to the eye. Food companies are constantly doing market research to see what sells and what looks good, but don't be fooled by the marketing trickery. Buzzwords such as organic, gluten-free, fortified with vitamin blah blah blah, this doesn't mean a product is healthy, so make sure you check the ingredients. These products can still be loaded with sugar and salt and preservatives, so don't fall into the label trap. If we take a look at, for example, apple juice, there may be a big green label slapped on of it saying no added sugar, and you'd think, well, it's apple juice, there's no added sugar, it seems healthy. But in reality, apples are full of sugar to start with. No added sugar just means there is no added sugar on top of the already large amounts of sugar in the bottle. So even though it may be natural, it's still a form of sugar, and if you have diabetes, for example, or trying to prevent it, this isn't a good option. A reminder that when you basically drink fruits, you consume 3, 4, 5 times the volume of fruit you might normally consume.